Right. So welcome everyone. Sorry for the early technological glitches. Kevin and I not being able to hear one another. But I'm happy to hear that you can hear us, and in particular that you can hear me for this presentation of the Lazy Person's Guide to Exercise Using Natural Movement. So before we get started, just a little bit about myself. I'm a registered psychologist, pro-social matrix consultant and trainer working with Dr. Kevin Polk, and I'm also a certified yoga instructor. So that's a little bit about me. I've been curious my whole life about all things related to movement, and I've been following the work of Katie Bowman, who I'll get into her work in a little bit. But her work relates to natural movement and movement ecology. And I took a Move Your DNA workshop with someone trained under her a few years ago, and then a dynamic aging movement workshop more recently in Massachusetts just this past February. And so I decided to put together this guide that will hopefully give you folks some ideas around how to move more and move more of you. Throughout this talk, feel free to type into the chat with questions, comments, and Kevin and I will do our best to respond to your questions and comments. So what is natural movement? Natural movement, it's become so popular that even the Mayo Clinic has a page defining it as including basic locomotion such as walking, running, climbing, or crawling, as well as manipulative movements such as lifting, carrying, throwing, and catching. So many natural movements, they say, incorporate multiple elements of fitness. For example, climbing helps build flexibility, strength, and conditioning all at once. This fitness approach is an efficient way to work out. Now, according to Katie Bowman, so she's the woman I mentioned before, she's a biomechanist, and she defines natural movement as anything that the human body does that it would also be doing were it in nature. Now, it's important to distinguish between movement and exercise. Now, what I'm talking about in this presentation is not just exercise. Rather, the conveniences of our modern lifestyle have reduced frequency and type of movements, and we can start to build more of those back into our everyday life, such as building in more movement nutrients. And that's a term that Katie Bowman uses, or nutritious movements into our life. Compared to natural movement, exercise routines tend to be more specialized motions that target just a few abilities. Notice right now, what is your position? And then maybe consider shifting it or changing it, even just wiggling around in your seat, or stretch your arms above. Just do something that shifts or changes your position. So the way we move matters. And the goal of natural movement is to move more of you more of the time. And this is important because we don't move enough. It's not going to be surprising to any of you. And among even the most active, we're still sedentary most of the time. So even if you're going to the gym or doing something for 1 hour, we're sitting or laying the rest of the hours of the day. And often this is in the same position. Just as the nutrients within the food we eat matter, so do the nutrients in our movements. And as I've mentioned already, Katie Bowman refers to this as nutritious movement. So I'd like to introduce you to a tool called the Matrix. This tool was developed by Dr. Kevin Polk, who you saw at the beginning of this presentation. And this tool, I think you'll discover, can help you move more and more of the time by training you to become more psychologically flexible. So I'm going to work you around this matrix, which is in fact named after the movie, but that's likely where a lot of the commonalities end. And this tool, the matrix, introduces you to noticing the uncomfortable stuff that shows up inside of you, and to notice it with curiosity, and then choose to do a move toward who and what's important to you in your life, even when it might be uncomfortable to do so. So let's look at the vertical line. So at the top of the diagram here, the top of the matrix, represents our 5 sense experience of the world. So it might be our taste, our touch, what we see, smell, hear. And the bottom of the vertical line, the bottom of the matrix, is our mental experience. In the middle, so the mental experience is anything that shows up inside of us. In the middle is noticing. So noticing whether it's your mental experience or noticing whether it's your 5 sense experience. So this beautiful picture I captured in Uganda. It is a mother, a mountain gorilla in Uganda with her 4-week-old baby in her arms. Thinking about your life, who is important to you? Anyone type in who might be important to you? I'm also just noticing in the chat that someone, perhaps people don't sit for 23 hours a day. Well, perhaps not for all 23 hours a day are we sitting or lying down, but a lot of the time we are spent non-moving. For most of us, that is the case. So thinking about your life, who is important to you? Many people will say family, friends, themselves. If you have, given you've signed up for this webinar, movement might be important to you, or the environment. Yeah, so many people are typing in saying family, their partner, wife. Absolutely. And so the next part of the matrix is what shows up and gets in the way of connecting to those important people in your life, to who's important to you. So if it comes to movement, it might be, fatigue, feeling lazy, that feeling of laziness, or fear of, what will people think, or procrastination, like, oh, maybe I can just do it later. Has anyone had any of that stuff or different stuff that shows up? What shows up for you that really gets in the way of movement or of connecting to something else that's important to you? Going to the top of the matrix, now it's for the action. So the horizontal line, what you do when, say, laziness or procrastination show up. And so things you might do to try to get rid of that uncomfortable stuff might be, buying a meal out, or using the back of your chair rather than sitting forward on your chair, driving to the store perhaps instead of walking to the store, sitting while waiting for an appointment rather than squatting, or doing some calf raises or something else, sitting in a chair in the same position just because it's our default comfortable position. Someone wrote in that they can find a way to rationalize their way out of activities. Absolutely, that's what our minds do. Our minds are rationalizing machines. That's the thing that our minds do. What about the other side of the matrix? What moves do we take to move toward who's important, even with some maybe discomfort of laziness, discomfort or laziness, or the things our minds say to us to try to get us out of doing an activity because it might be difficult. Well, we might take a meeting by walking, or walk to the store instead of driving. Has anyone chosen to sit on the floor to eat, to incorporate more movement into their lives? Absolutely. Someone wrote in taking the stairs over the elevator or an escalator. Great example. You might, walk around barefoot at home or outside. What about, if you're hanging out at an airport? Most of us have probably had to spend some time in airports. What do you do at the airport? Do you wait in the lounge? Do you wait right by the gate, or do you kind of walk from one gate to the other, find a quiet corner, do some yoga? What do you do to prepare your food? Do you buy it all prepared, or do you chop your vegetable? All these things are movements. Even wiggling in your chair, wiggling in your seat right now, movement. And so I have some folks writing in some examples of sometimes taking the long way around to get to the restroom or drinking fountain. Great examples. Absolutely. So these are not about huge shifts in the way we do things, but incorporating little shifts or different ways of doing what we're already doing. And so the key is to notice what we're doing, and notice whether it is working for us or not working in terms of working towards our goals or what's important to us in life. So another way this model is referred to, the matrix, is the workability model. So it's not about right or wrong, good or bad. Sometimes chilling out in a chair, that might be an awesome move towards family or friends. And other times maybe, a move toward might be squatting on the floor, doing something different. The key is to add more movement nutrients to your life. And so I encourage each of you, as you reflect on your life right now, to consider what small shifts might you take within the constraints of your current life to add a few more nutritious movements to your day-to-day life. So that photo there is actually a photo of me climbing a tree, and it was the first time I climbed a tree in probably decades. And it was exhilarating. And I, put your mind to it, you can actually do it with some practice. Now, you might not start by climbing trees. So where might you start? You might sit on the floor to read or eat. You might squat while waiting in line, or do calf raises, or do some other sort of stretch while you're waiting in line. How many of us spend some of our day waiting in one line or another? You might run or walk outside of using equipment at the gym. Doesn't mean never use a gym, but in addition to using the gym, or sometimes instead of, get outside in nature and get a little bit more variety in terms of the types of movements so that we can move more of our body. Take an extra walk. Have a walking date instead of a sitting down coffee date. And when using chairs, sit in different positions. Sit on the end. Use more of your body, more of the muscles of your body to sit. So there's a concept that Katie Bowman talks about that is stacking your life. And this concept is the idea that life and movement can be integrated, such as integrating different parts of your life, time with family and friends, rest, work, and community, being met simultaneously to also moving. And so, how might you stack your life, incorporating a little bit more movement into something you already do, perhaps by shifting how you're currently doing it? I encourage you to write in the chat box any ideas you might have. As you're considering what you might do in your life to shift, to add more nutritious movement, consider that the context matters. So again, it's not about the matrix as a tool to help us consider moving more and moving more towards what matters. It's not about good or bad or right or wrong, but what's working. And so 200 squats in a row, perhaps not natural movement, whereas squatting down to get some water throughout the day or squatting for different things throughout the day, perhaps more natural movement. Don't get lost in whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Just notice what it is you're doing and in what context, and whether it's in a away or a toward move for you in that given context. As I was preparing for to talk about natural movement, I started thinking more along the lines of context and how much context matters. Mindset. Who here has heard of that term before, mindset? There's a recent study that was discussed on National Public Radio, NPR in the US, that had the title, "Just Thinking You're Slacking on Exercise Could Boost Risk of Death." And so this study was published in Health Psychology, and it found that American adults who believed that they were less active than their peers died younger than those who believed they were more active, even with similar actual activity levels. And so in addition to doing differently, to making a shift in what you're actually doing, it's also important to consider how you are contextualizing what you're doing. So how the mindset, so the way you're thinking about what you are actually doing also makes a difference. If you think you're doing exercise, you're going to reap more of the benefits. So a study from quite a while ago now, so 2007, it was published in Psychological Science, the Journal of Psychological Science, by Elia Crum and Ellen J. Langer. They reported this, and I'm going to quote it. So in a study testing whether the relationship between exercise and health is moderated by one's mindset, 84 female room attendants working in 7 different hotels were measured on physiological health variables affected by exercise. Those in the informed condition, so those that were told that the work they do, i.e. cleaning hotel rooms, is good exercise and satisfies the Surgeon General's recommendations for an active lifestyle. So examples of how the work was exercised were provided. So that was the informed group. And then subjects in the control group were not given this information. So the researchers studied their actual behavior, and this did not change over the course of 4 weeks. And yet after 4 weeks, just having been told that what they do is exercise, the informed group, so those hotel room workers, perceive themselves to be getting significantly more exercise than before. And as a result, the study quotes, compared with the control group, they showed a decrease in weight, blood pressure, body fat, waist to hip ratio, and body mass index. So just pause and let that information soak in for a moment. So 4 weeks of just believing that what you're doing is exercise leads to changes, significantly different changes in weight, blood pressure, body fat, waist to hip ratio, and body mass index. So even if you don't do anything different, which I certainly encourage you to also shift some things that you're doing, but even if you don't do anything different, if you start to see the stuff that you already do more as exercise and movement, power to you. Is everyone still hearing me okay? Just before I shift to the next slide. So Kevin says he can still hear me. What about others? Can someone type into the chat just to let me know that you can still hear me? Okay. Oh, thank you, Daryl. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you also, Amy. And so for those of you that might be curious about learning more about natural movement and how you can incorporate more movement into your life, I really encourage you to check out Katie Bowman's work. She's got lots of work online. She has a podcast that's free, lots of blogs that she's written that are super helpful, and everything can be found on nutritiousmovement.com. In addition, she has a number of books. They might be available in your public library, or feel free to go to wherever you buy books. You can also buy some of her books as audiobooks. And so you could incorporate a little bit more movement and move more of you by reading one of her books or listening to one of her books, or a podcast for that matter. So in conclusion, just a short little talk on natural movement. I'd like to encourage you again to move more of you and move more of the time. And it can start with the smallest of actions. So it could be, changing where you keep something in your kitchen so that you have to reach for it. Or taking one of your phone calls a day walking. Most of us have mobile phones now. So what about taking one of your phone calls walking? Or even standing for a phone call every once in a while instead of sitting. So consider in your life, what 1 or 2 first steps could you take to move more of you and more of the time? I invite you to check out my website at drjuliebeaulac.com. I have a link that's on there to the slides from today's talk. So feel free to click on that button under the resources page or on my homepage, and I will send you those right away. If you have any questions or comments, my email address is also on my website. It's julie@drjuliebeaulac.com. It's also listed on my website if you didn't catch that. And if you have any requests in terms of, things that you think you'd like to know more about in terms of natural movement, suggestions for future webinars, or if you know a group that is interested in having someone come and talk about this matter, this is something I can take on the road also. So feel free to write me with your suggestions and ideas. And I hope that you found this talk to be nutritious in terms of information, and that it helps move you towards moving more of you and more of the time.
Great. I put my mic back on. You can hear me now. This is Kevin, Dr. Paul.
I can hear you, Kevin.
Great. That was fabulous. I was moving throughout the whole webinar.
What kind of movement, Kevin?
Oh, I was standing up and doing, stretches and this and that and the other. Since I wasn't talking, I could stand up and stretch.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody,
and it appears now you can hear me.
And so everybody click on the link and you can get over to Julie's handouts and contact her about in-person presentations or whatever. And thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you, everyone. Take care and happy moving.
Yeah. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.